This is the final video in my Chewbacca build series. Today, we finished the last two pieces, the Wookiee Feet and the Bandolier. Then we take the full suit to the Hollywood Christmas parade with the Rebel Legion. I started building this costume in December of 2016. It was finally approved in November of 2024. That's 8 years of learning, rebuilding, and slowly improving one piece at a time. I'm gonna be honest. I've been looking forward to this video for a long time because this is the part where the build stops being a project and becomes something that actually goes out into the world. This video is not a step-by-step class. I'll give you enough that you can roughly follow the process if you're building your own, but the goal is inspiration. I want you to see what it really looks like to take a massive build from messy beginnings to a finished costume that holds up in real life. Also, quick note. I'll have links in the description for materials, tools, and resources I used, plus I made a small visual guide for the video that summarizes the key parts. It's linked below too. Alright, let's talk Wookiee Feet. When I started working on the costume, I decided the feet had to come first, because the feet affect everything. They affect your height, the pattern for the fursuit, and how the whole silhouette reads. Chewbacca is generally accepted to be about 7.5 feet tall. The Rebel Legion requires that Chewbacca costumers to hit at least 7 feet. I'm 6'7", so I didn't need stilts, I didn't need extreme platform boots, I just needed enough height to cross that 7-foot line and look like Chewbacca. A lot of builders do need stilts or tall platform boots. I don't have a personal stilt recommendation because I've never worn them, but I will link to the Rebel Legion resources and other builder notes in the description. For my first attempt at the feet, I wanted to be as accurate as possible and try to hit 7.5 feet tall. So I built platforms out of 1-inch insulation foam. I drew a side profile of what I thought the foot needed to look like, cut out a bunch of layers, glued them together to build up the volume, and then I attached the whole thing to a shoe. To attach it, I covered the foam and the shoe in black duct tape, and I made sure not to tape over the laces so I could still loosen and tighten the shoe. Then I patterned the fur by wrapping the entire foot in cling film and painter's tape, cutting the shapes apart, and using that as my pattern. And when I finally put the fur on, they seriously looked like giant furry clown shoes. I wanted them to look like Wookiee feet, and instead they looked like a mascot version of Chewie. And I tried to solve it. I really did. I spent way too long thinking, okay, maybe if I trim this, maybe if I reshape that, maybe the fur will hide it. But the truth was, I was trying to keep too much height in the feet. And the more height I added, the more ridiculous the silhouette became. So I did something that hurt a little. I tossed them completely. Version 1 went in the trash and I started over. And this is one of the big lessons of the whole build. Sometimes progress is not adding. Sometimes progress is letting go of a version that technically works because it's not the version that feels right. So here's what changed. I decided that I didn't need to chase 7.5 feet tall. Once you're over 7 feet tall, very few people are going to be able to tell the difference between 7 feet and 7 feet 6. And the mask was going to add height anyway, so I stopped asking the shoes to do all the work. Instead, I aimed for a smaller lift that would be stable and comfortable and let the overall costume do the rest. For the final version, I used an Asics shoe. I think it was a running or volleyball shoe. I built a wedge lift out of EVA foam, glued the foam pieces together with contact cement, and then I taped the wedge onto the shoe using duct tape. Now, the next problem was the toes. The toes in the original trilogy don't match what was used in The Force Awakens. They look a bit different. And yes, people sell Wookiee toes online. That is a real thing. But the common ones wouldn't match the Force Awakens look, so I had to make my own. Chewie has 5 toes on each foot, like a human. They just look like really big gray human feet. So once I had the final shoe shape, I drew out a pattern for what I wanted the feet to look like and sculpted them in monster clay. Monster clay is a wax-based clay that's most commonly used for sculpting masks and prosthetics in the effects world, like for film and TV. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not an expert sculptor. I don't have a ton of experience, but I also wasn't too worried, because who's gonna be closely looking at Wookiee toes? If they look right from a couple of feet away, we're good. Once the sculpts were done, I made brush-on molds of each foot. To save money, I used the same material for molding that I used for casting, Smooth-On's Vitaflex 50. Vitaflex 50 is a urethane rubber that cures tough, and I wanted something that could handle walking on pavement, getting bumped, and generally being used like real footwear. To make it brushable, I thickened it with Urethane 9. This was my first time really molding and casting anything, so I leaned on experts. I got a lot of guidance from Reynolds Advanced Materials, which is a local shop here in LA that a lot of the effects houses use. They were really helpful. At a high level, the brush-on mold process goes like this. Mold release on the sculpt, a thin detail layer of rubber so you capture everything, then thicker layers for strength. And then you need a rigid outer shell so the flexible mold holds its shape. I used plaster bandages for that outer shell. Then you clean all the clay out, which takes forever and is not fun. And you're ready to cast. For casting, I used a lot of mold release because when your mold and your cast are the same material, it's really easy for them to stick together. Then it was a thin detail layer again, thicker layers for strength, and I decided to make the toes solid because I knew they'd take most of the abuse. And that decision worked, but it also taught me something, because what I ended up with was very durable and heavier than I needed it to be. I also made one mistake. The outer rubber layer around the heel wasn't thick enough and it split down the back. It wasn't a deal breaker, I worked around it, but if I did it again, I'd do a thick rubber skin for durability and then fill the interior with expanding foam. It would keep its shape, it would be way lighter, and it would be easier to carve out space for the shoe underneath. Because yes, I had to carve out a huge portion of the underside so the shoe could sit comfortably under the toes. It was slow, it was annoying, but it worked. Before attaching everything, I painted the feet gray with acrylic paint and sealed them with acrylic matte spray varnish. One nice thing about urethane rubber is acrylic paint generally sticks well. Silicone is a different story. The only thing that sticks to silicone is silicone, so don't use silicone. Now, the part of the feet that I'm most proud of is not the rubber, it's the fur. As you can see, the fur covers come off. The fur is the same fake fur that I used for the body, latch-hooked onto net fabric. I was able to salvage the fur covers from the original one and trim them down to fit the new feet. And I attached those fur covers with snaps. Originally, I only used 2 snaps per foot, and that wasn't enough. I upgraded to 4 snaps per foot. There are 2 snaps on the front, 1 on each side, and 2 snaps on the back, 1 on each side. This matters for long-term care because being able to remove the fur means if I ever had to clean it, repair it, add more hair, or fix something, I could do that without fighting a full shoe and toe assembly. And I also made it so you can't physically put the wrong fur cover on the wrong foot. On one foot, I used one side of the snaps on the fur cover. On the other foot, I used the opposite side. So if you try to swap them, they literally won't connect. Because when you're late and are rushing to put your costume on, it's great that you can't put it on wrong. The final touch was the toenails. And I swear, this is when it made the feet look real. I used cleaned out 2-liter soda bottles, cut toenail shapes out of them, and lightly sanded the bottom. And then I painted them with black gel nail polish. Then I cured them under UV light and superglued them directly onto the urethane toes. Those toes did an absurd amount to make it look real. And with that, the Wookiee feet were done. Now, Bandolier time. The bandolier was a whole project on its own, because it's one of the most iconic parts of Chewbacca's silhouettes, and it's deceptively complicated. I started with research. Honestly, one of the best resources was watching The Force Awakens and pausing a lot. But the real gold was the Force Awakens visual dictionary, because it has a great profile image where you can clearly see the bandolier layout. In that configuration, there are 13 boxes on the bandolier, and there are 3 types. 5 boxes with lids, 5 skinny boxes, and 3 wide boxes. And the lid boxes flip orientation in different spots. Some are lid up, some are lid down, and that adds variation. After comparing screenshots, I realized the boxes don't stay consistent from shot to shot. There are multiple bandoliers used on screen, so I picked one configuration and committed to it. I chose the configuration from the visual dictionary. Once I had the references, I 3D modeled the bandolier boxes. I actually lost my original models, which hurts, but I recreated them so I can share them with you. Links will be in the description. They're free for personal use, and like I mentioned at the top, I also make a small visual guide for each tentpole build video. The visual guide for the video is linked below too. After I modeled the boxes, I still needed to figure out the scale, so I measured how long and wide the strap needed to be for my body. The strap, not counting the bag, is about 68 inches long and 4 inches wide. Then I made paper templates of the boxes so I could lay them out physically, adjust spacing, and lock the proportions before printing. Once I had the scale and layout nailed down, I moved on to 3D printing. I printed one of each box type, tested fit, tweaked the models, printed again, and repeated until I found something I liked. For the boxes without lids, I decided to mold and cast them instead of printing all of them. But before molding, I had to get rid of all the layer lines. This was a lot of sanding, spot putty, and filler primer. It was slow and it took a while, but metallic paint will show every single layer line, so the surface prep mattered. Once they were smooth, I made silicone dump molds and cast more boxes than I needed, because I wanted extras just in case. After cleanup, I painted them with a gloss black base, then a metallic finish, then sealed them. With the boxes done, I moved on to leatherwork, and this is where the bandolier got really expensive. The strap needed a long continuous piece of thick leather, and I couldn't locally find a single piece long enough for the entire strap. So I made it out of 2 pieces and hid the joint. The leather I used was a 3.4mm Vegetan. Before dyeing, I glued the 2 strap sections together and I made sure the joint landed under a box so you wouldn't notice it. I also didn't cut the leather at a straight seam. I cut both ends at a 45-degree angle so there was more surface area for the glue to bond to. Then I glued on the smaller strap pieces that run along the top edges, and I cut a huge number of long straps to hold the boxes onto the bandolier. Then I dyed everything. I tested a couple of different dyes and picked my favorite, but I didn't write it down, so I don't know the exact dye brand or color. Sorry. I do know that I sealed it with a matte leather sealer. Then it was time for assembly. I added snaps on both ends so I could take the bandolier bag on and off if I ever needed to. Then I punched holes for weaving the straps that hold the boxes on. This took more straps than I ever expected. I couldn't make a single strap long enough to hold everything, so I had to join multiple straps. When I joined them, I made sure to join the end on the back side, and I glued it to the next section so you couldn't see where the pieces joined. And here's the biggest lesson I learned while doing this. At first, I was weaving these top straps while the bandolier was lying flat. But you don't wear a bandolier flat. When you curve it around your body, the top strap needs more length to handle the bend. So weave the straps while the bandolier is in the curved shape it'll be when you wear it. That one change saves you from finishing the whole thing and realizing that the top straps are too short. For the bag portion, I made a paper pattern first, used it to prototype it, tested the scale, and then cut it out of leather. I hand sewed it with a saddle stitch, which is a common leatherworking stitch. I'll link a saddle stitch tutorial in the description. The bag has a flap, but there's nothing keeping it closed other than gravity. No magnet, no snap, no tie, just a flap. Once the bandolier was done, I wore the costume more, and I realized I needed a few upgrades. The biggest one was that the boxes would not stay under the straps. They kept falling out. So I ended up attaching them to the bandolier with nuts and bolts. For the boxes with lids, this was easy. Drill a hole through the box, screw it in, done. For the cast boxes, it was a lot harder. I had to drill a larger hole for the nut, glue the nut in place, and then screw it in. That means that the nut is being held on with glue. And yes, I've had a few boxes eventually fall out when the glue broke. It's been relatively easy to fix with super glue, but it's still a weak point. Another thing I learned, the cast boxes are really heavy. They make the bandolier a lot heavier than it needs to be, and I honestly just wish that I 3D printed all the boxes to save weight. In the future, I want to reprint the cast boxes with built-in space so the nuts can't pop loose, and so the whole thing weighs less. One more future upgrade I want to do is adding a small clip leash to attach the bandolier to the fursuit. Right now, it's not attached and just hangs over my shoulder across my body. I tried using a strong magnet once to hold it on the shoulder, but it dug into my shoulder and it was extremely uncomfortable. I've heard from other Chewbacca costumers that a strap with a plastic clip attached to the undersuit is comfortable, and I've also heard that's similar to how the official event suits handle it. I haven't done that upgrade yet, but it's on the list. And once again, if you want the box models, the patterns, and my visual guide, everything is linked down in the description, free for personal use. Okay, now for the part I've been waiting for, the reveal. I want to show you the payoff, but I also want to be honest about what you're seeing. I dressed as Chewbacca for both the 2024 and 2025 Hollywood Christmas Parade. In 2024, I have great red carpet footage. In 2025, I have everything else. The drive over, getting dressed, behind the scenes, walking the route, and my post-parade. I can't believe I survived that moment. So the reveal you're about to see is a blend of both years, because I want you to feel what it was like, not just watch a highlight reel. This suit took years. It took research, mistakes, rebuilds, and a lot of time alone in my apartment doing slow, repetitive work. It was approved in November 2024, and I'm still kind of shocked when I say that out loud. And then 2025 happened. I decided I wanted to walk the entire parade route, partly because for years, kids would yell, "Where's Chewie?" through most of the parade, not just the red carpet. And this time, I wanted to actually give them Chewie. This is the part I want to leave you with. Big builds don't start polished. They start messy. They start with a version that looks like furry clown shoes, and you keep going anyways. You learn, you rebuild, you ask for help, you take the slow steps. You do the unglamorous sanding, you redo the part you thought you were done with, and eventually, if you stick with it long enough, you get a moment where a crowd full of strangers are yelling Chewie, and you realize the thing you made is giving people joy. That reaction made every hour worth it. If you want to follow the whole build, I'll link the full Chewbacca series playlist on screen and in the description. And if you're building your own costume, I'm linking the visual guide for the video, plus the patterns and the box models, free for personal use. If this video inspired you, consider subscribing. I'm a small channel and every single subscriber helps more than you think. And if you've ever made a costume that took you years, I want to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. I read all of them. That's it for the video. Keep building, keep believing, and may the Force be with you always.